Hi, R girls. My name is Jenny Sloan. I'm currently a PhD student and I use R almost every day. I'm really excited to be part of this incredible program and really just to be part of your R journey. I hope that I can be a mentor to all of you and help out any way that I can. So I thought it would be nice to start off with a little introduction about myself, and then I'll switch over to RStudio to go through some of the basics to get us started and to make sure everyone's on the same page. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and a huge sports fan, so go Baltimore Ravens and Maryland Terps. I studied psychology in college at the University of Maryland. Then I moved to upstate New York where I got my master's in experimental psychology from Syracuse University. And now, as I said, I'm a PhD student studying cognitive psychology at the University of New South Wales, which means I've had the pleasure of living in Sydney for the past 4 years. My research interests include studying the effects of interruptions and time pressure on decision making, and in my free time, I enjoy running, going on hikes, watching and playing sports, traveling with friends and family, and teaching art to younger students. And that is one of the reasons I'm so excited to have this opportunity to be part of R Girls with all of you. Now, I will say that learning any programming language, especially your first one, can be very difficult and definitely frustrating at times, but I promise it will be super rewarding along the way and in the end. I really hope that you find this process enjoyable and you work together and help each other out. And also, please know that you have an amazing art community all around you, so you can always turn to us if you have any questions or need help with anything. Okay, so before we jump over to RStudio, I do have a few links posted here. Now, I'll put all of these links below in the description below, but I have my personal website, link to my GitHub and LinkedIn, but for now I just want to open up my website. One, because I made this completely in R, so I think it's really cool and would love to show you. Okay, here we go. So this is my website, but not only did I make it in R, but I also do have a section on blogs, and there's one in particular that many of you might be interested in checking out. So I recently wrote this blog post on Introduction to R, where I go through everything from the beginning. So the basics of installing R and RStudio, getting familiar with R, and talking about things like working directory, projects, scripts, and slightly more advanced topic of getting into what is tidyverse and how can we use tidyverse. So please do check out this blog. I know there's a lot of information here, which might seem overwhelming at first. So I've also turned this blog into a YouTube series. Right now it's actually just 2 parts, but you can see, again, I'll post this link below, but you can go through the Introduction to R part 1 and part 2 with me together in these YouTube tutorials. But for today, I want to just go over a couple of the basics, such as getting familiar with RStudio and and understanding what a working directory is, as well as introducing the idea of R projects. All right, so let's get started by opening up RStudio. Now, I will assume that at this point, everyone has R and RStudio installed, but don't worry if you don't. Please check out that blog post, and I have step-by-step instructions for getting everything installed. So here we have RStudio, and the first thing I'll do is open up a script, and I believe a lot of you are familiar with R Markdown. So I'll just open up an R Markdown script. I'll call it intro. And now this is kind of like the default setup for RStudio. We have 4 different panes. So the pane I just opened up, this is called the source editor. So this is where we'll be spending a lot of time and working on our scripts. So this is where we write code that we want to save for later. The bottom left, here we have the console. So this is where you can type some code in if you want to test something out. you can see if I just do a simple 2 plus 2, it will return 4. And also, you might notice that if you run code from your script above, so if we just run this current chunk, you can see 1 by default, it might print out here, but it will also print out in our console. On the right, up in the top, we have a few different tabs, but I think the environment tab is the most important for beginners. Right now, we can see it's empty, but as soon as you start coding, and you'll see this fills up really quickly because this is where all of your variables and objects will be saved. And down in the bottom right, again, we have some different tabs: files, plots, packages. There's a really good help documentation within RStudio and a viewer tab. But now I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about what this files tab is. So this is where R thinks you're located. And I just opened up RStudio just from the quick search. And now I don't really know where home is. Like, I don't recognize some of these files. So that means if I save a file, I might not necessarily know where I'm saving it. So that could be a big problem, because of course you want to be able to save your work and open it up and know exactly where everything is located. So now I'm going to introduce you to this idea of an R project. And this will help you keep everything super organized, and you'll know exactly where all of your files are, and it's really an amazing tool. So if we look at the top right corner, we see this R cube. It says project. So this is our project, and it currently says none because we haven't set any project. So right now, and please feel free to follow along with me, we're going to create our very first R project. And now let me just show you, because I want to save all of my work just to my desktop. So I'll just show you on my desktop, I have nothing saved here, right? I just have the recycle bin. So the goal is I want to create a project where I have a folder. I'll call it R Girls, and we'll create the project, and all of my files will be straight on my desktop and easy to find. Okay, so back in RStudio, we're going to click this button and select New Project. There are a few different options here. If you already have a folder, then you can click Existing Directory, but as you saw on my desktop, I didn't even have a folder, so I want to create a new directory. And we won't worry about version control for now. So if we go to New Directory, and again, we want a project, so New Project, let's call this R Girls. And this is a bit of a side note, but important. When we're programming, it's really, really good practice to avoid white spaces. So white spaces like this, we want to try to avoid. So some people use underscores. For this one, I'm just going to put a dash in. And this is just because programming languages often run into issues when trying to handle white spaces. So it's best just to avoid it altogether. Okay, so I have my directory name, R Girls. And now, importantly, we want to make sure we click Browse and put this directory exactly where we want. So you can see I actually don't have to do it because by default it already has me on my desktop. But please take time, browse, and put this R project where you want it to be. Okay, so now that I have my directory name, I know it's going to be on my desktop, I can click Create Project. And now you'll see R is reloading. And now if you look at the top, rather than none, it says we're working in R Girls on the R Girls project on the desktop. So now if I go back to my desktop, this is pretty cool. It automatically created this folder. And let me put it on this screen. So now I have a folder, and you can see this R cube automatically got created, and it says R Girls. So this is really great. And now I want to show you what's so amazing about this. So let's say we accidentally close out of RStudio, or maybe you finish for the day, you close out of RStudio, and the next day you want to come back and continue working. Rather than going this way and opening up RStudio and trying to figure out where you are, all you have to do is navigate to your folder and open up this R cube or R project button. So you can see it's an R project, and this is what we just created. So now if I double click on this, we'll automatically open up our project, and you can see importantly, this is called our working directory. So this is where our things were located, and because we're working with this R project, it knows exactly where we want to be. So this is why R projects are so amazing. And just to show you this idea of a working directory, you can see this pathway here. There's a function that's called getWD, and if we put these parentheses around and click enter, you can see we're asking R to get where R thinks we are located, so get our working directory. And you can see this file pathway aligns perfectly with what we see here. So by using our projects, we don't have to worry about working directories because it will automatically open up R to the right working directory. Okay, so now we've gotten familiar with a little bit of the RStudio setup and introduced the idea of working directories and even created our own R project. But now there's just a couple of features that I wanted to point out. So I'm going to go back and create a Markdown because I don't think I saved this before. So now I'm going to create this Markdown file. And now you can see I titled it intro, but it still says untitled here. So I do still have to actually save it. And because I'm working in my project, it knows automatically that it wants to save it straight within our project. So we'll just call this intro. So now we have it saved, and you can even see it appears in our files over here. So if we close out, no problem, we can just open it back up. Okay, so a quick review of our Markdown file. We have this section, this is called a YAML, where you can put your title. Right now it's set to output as an HTML document. And the great thing about R Markdown files is that you can incorporate both code and text within the same file to create really incredible and beautiful reports. And as we'll see in a second, there's this cool knit button that lets you piece it all together. Okay, so this is called an R chunk, and you can create an R chunk. I know on Windows at least, it's Control-Alt-I, so that's the shortcut. You can also, I believe, this button, you can create an R chunk like that. So here's the R chunk. You can run the chunk by clicking the button. You can also do Control-Enter to run the chunk. And then we can see there's some standard text and another chunk here. So let's just, as an example, let's run this chunk. And here we see that it automatically prints out a summary. This is the summary function of a car's data set. So it prints out the summary here, but it also prints it out in our console. So keep that in mind. And now if we let's just try knitting our entire file. You can see it pops up in a brand new window. Okay, so see, these are some of the default settings for R Markdown. So I have some personal preferences, so this is totally up to you, but I just wanted to show you some of the options that you can set. So if you go to Tools, Global Options, the first thing, because we're in R Markdown, we can go to R Markdown. I like having this soft wrap. It kind of will wrap the text around so you can always see everything you're writing. And we saw when we knitted the file, it opened up a brand new window. I personally like having it open up in the viewer pane, which is just this pane over here, which I'll show you in a second. So I'm going to change it to viewer pane. Again, this is up to you. And the last thing I'm going to change is, as you saw, when we ran this code, the summary printed right below within our source editor, I think that's a little bit distracting. I like just having it straight in the console. So I'm going to uncheck this button that says show output inline for all R Markdown documents. Okay, so all I've done was I've set it to the viewer pane and I've unchecked this button here. So let's click apply and OK. I'm going to close out of this, and now let's clear this, Control L to clear. If I run this again, you can see it prints in the console, but it doesn't print in the script. So that's what I like, that's what I want. And finally, the other change, if we knit our file now, we can see it in our viewer pane here. So I really like that. I think it's really easier than having things pop up, and I like working with the viewer pane. Okay, and the very last thing I want to show you, and again, this is of course completely up to you guys, and if you go to global options, there's an appearance button, and this is where you can change the editor theme. So right now we have it set at the default, which is called text me. So you can, I think this is really fun. You can go through and see which one you like. Some of them are light backgrounds, some of them are dark backgrounds. Now, I personally like the dark backgrounds. This is my favorite, and this is the one I'm used to, Tomorrow Night Bright. So I'm going to click apply, okay. So now you can see nothing has changed except the color of the theme. So I just wanted to show you, this is how I have my R set up in case you want to have it set up the same way, but also so you know where you can make some of the changes to the default settings. Okay, so thanks so much. I hope you found this helpful, and I'm excited to, as I said at the beginning, I'm excited to be part of this program, and I know you already have some amazing lesson plans that you've gone through, and I hope that I can contribute and create lesson plans for you in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to working with you and hopefully meeting all of you soon.